people really look to you, and in some cases really look at you as a savior and a hero. And that's not to pat myself on the back, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, wow, I see all these closings, and Mr. Mark, I really, really want a house, and just help me. I'll do whatever it takes, right? So when a person says something like that to you, you almost have a personal responsibility, even if they have a 530 credit score, to say, hey, you know what? Do these things and stay in touch with me.
Welcome to The Growth Mindset, the podcast for ambitious real estate and mortgage professionals. Hosted by Adam Crosley and Rick Riddle, this show dives into entrepreneurial strategies, sales techniques, and mindset hacks designed to fuel your career growth. Get ready to learn from top producers, gain actionable insights, and start your journey towards success. Here's your hosts, Adam and Rick.
Buongiorno, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of The Growth Mindset. I'm Rick Riddle with my co-host,
Adam Crosley.
And we're very excited today to have a guest on who we're really good friends with, Mark Wilson. Thank you for joining us. Mark is a branch manager here at Crown Home Mortgage, but he's much more than that. And I thought he had an awesome story to tell that I wanted to kind of share kind of his thoughts and how he got there. So I'll just kind of start and give a little bio of Mark. Mark also has been with us for a while and actually started, he's in Philadelphia and started with just a hashtag, which I think is brilliant, was Kiss Your Landlord Goodbye, right? And that's developed now into the Black Brilliance Homeownership team, which really helps homeownership in Philadelphia. But he now has a team of realtors and obviously mortgages and does a whole thing. And I think that's awesome. So welcome, Mark.
Glad to be here, Rick and Adam. And thank you for the warm introduction.
Yeah. So Kiss Your Landlord Goodbye. Well, we'll start there, right? It was kind of the start of this. It predated your original journey with Crown. So how did you kind of come up with that? And what did you, like, how did your journey go through that?
Well, I'll tell you, I would love to take all the credit for it. But, my wife has been in marketing for years, and she was like, just kind of give you a little bit more background. Why are you chasing realtors all day, right? Why don't we work on some stuff together to maybe kind of go direct to consumer? Mm-hmm. And I shoot her off and said, that's not how this business works. And it's never going to work on social media. Nobody's going to call me and want to buy a house. And, because I do a poster or an advertisement. And she's like, just try it. Right. And she comes in one day and she shows me these little posts with Kiss Your Landlord Goodbye with like big puckered lips and stuff like that. And I said, all right, I'll give it a try. And the funny thing is it didn't work. Right. And I wasn't spending a ton of money at this time boosting posts or anything. But, $5, $10, $15 a day, whatever. Yeah. And literally after about 6 months, I was like, I'm done with this thing. And literally on that day, I got 3 calls. And you know what day it was? It was Christmas Day. I'll never forget it, right? I get 3 calls on Christmas Day.
On Christmas Day.
And it just kind of really took off consistently from there. And I've always kind of believed, and a lot of my mentors always believed, we are loan officers, right? But basically, we're marketers that happen to have our NMLS licenses. You can be the best at what you do, and it doesn't really matter at all if nobody knows who you are. I call those people compliance. Right. So if you get out here and you're going to sell, you might as well, really, really create some slogans, create a presence for yourself, whether it's online, social media, whether it's, the internet, or obviously networking groups and things like that. You have to be marketing. And that's just what it is for us, in my opinion.
I think there's a couple of cool things that you said in that is one, I've said it before, whoever has the lead has the power, and you went out and got the leads first, right? Mm-hmm. and figured, and there is a growing trend that customers are getting pre-approved before they find real estate agents, which you would think the 3 mortgage guys sit in a room, makes sense. Let's see how much you qualify for. But now you're starting to see that happen more. I also think that's interesting is that you've said you put 6 months of time, effort, and money. And I know you're spending, your lead spend was lower, 15 grand a day or 15 grand a month, right? But had lead spend, and we're about to give up,
Yeah.
right? And if 6 months in and the perseverance of then it paid off. And now you're getting, like, fast forward to today, how many leads? Hundreds. I know that sometimes a couple hundred leads a month, right?
Yeah, easily.
Wow.
Today I actually got about 12 phone calls. And I would say we should get about, if they send their documents in, we should get about 6, 7 pre-approvals out of it. Spending a little bit more money now than I was, 5, 6 years ago, right? But it's really taken off, and just building trust with your niche market that you're going after, your target market. Doing things like posting closings. Doing some educational stuff as well, right? And my market is obviously, underserved. And a lot of people really just don't feel like they can buy a home. And they also feel like nobody's going to stand by their side each step of the way and really explain the process. So, over this length of time of being very consistent, it started in that journey I was about to give up during those 6 months, but just kind of doing it every single day. Right. Not letting 2 or 3 days go by without posting. Right. Having an organized page. Right. We're financial professionals. Right. So it always kills me when you see realtors or people in the mortgage business and you look at their page and it's a little bit disheveled and you're expecting somebody to trust you with the biggest financial decision of your life, right? And it's funny, I don't mind sharing any tips. I tell people my slogans. I tell them what I do on my page. I tell them I got an editor, whatever, because the sad thing is, and it's unfortunate, a lot of people will not do it anyway.
Yeah. Most people won't.
Most people will not do it anyway, right? So there's no need to gatekeep and even keep things a secret. Share it, because as long as you're doing it and you're doing it professionally and doing it good, you're still going to have your audience. And the key thing there is you really help as many people as possible, whether it's through me or whether it's through another professional that is doing the same thing on social media. Let's just get more people in homes. Let's stop renting.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love the whole direct-to-consumer idea. It's not something I do personally in my business, but I think it's wonderful. Now, breaking that apart a little bit, Mark, do you is it the same ad that you're running all week? Is it, different ad, like a couple ads, different ads every day, or like who's coming up with the content? Or tell me a little bit about the actual content that you're putting out.
Yeah, a lot of it is my concepts, right? My editor helps me out, kind of with the visuals and the graphics and things like that. But I'll give him, some bullet points or some ideas of where to go. Never the same ads too much. I know a lot of, the bigger mortgage companies and bigger lenders, you'll see the same ad and it's them every single time, which, has its validity. I just kind of am constantly doing different stuff, but, the same kind of color palette and things like that. So I think the color palette will allow people to really know this is Mark Wilson, Mortgage Pro, his production or whatever the case may be. Yeah. But keep it fresh at the same time. Mm-hmm. You can either talk about education, highlight, some grants, in my marketplace. There's so many misconceptions out there, particularly with the underserved community. I'm sure you probably see a lot of this too, where you are, Adam, up in New York. Yeah. People think you need a 700 credit score. Yeah. And you don't,
20% down, and you don't. Exactly.
And you don't, right? And you have to have all these reserves in the bank and all these different things, and you don't. So, once you post just even some of that educational content, it doesn't have to be flashy, right? But you're just letting people know, hey, these are myths that are just that. They're myths. Just reach out to me and let's just talk, right? There's no pressure here, right? If you decide to move forward, you do. If not, keep my number for a time in the future, right? And I also encourage people to share it,
Super casual, let's just start a conversation type content.
Let's have a homeownership conversation. That's, part of what I put in there too,
Another one of your texts. It all started with, I think one of your hashtags is, it all started with a text.
It all started with a text. Yeah.
Very
so people can reach out to me, Adam. I do, on the actual post, I'll put text me and kiss your landlord goodbye, or Black Brilliance, or I'm tired of renting,
Yeah.
to, my actual cell phone number, right? So the idea is that as many people, in my city of Philadelphia, have my number as possible. They can share it with friends or family. And what's happening more and more is I get phone calls from people and they say, Miss Smith asked me to reach out to you. Um, I don't ask them who Miss Smith is. I don't know who Miss Smith is, but she probably saw me on Facebook or Instagram or the internet or somewhere, right? And saved my information and passed it along. So it's not always about even the consumer themselves. It's just about that whole marketplace because, a 55-year-old grandmom could share it with her granddaughter.
Mm-hmm.
Right. All of those things. And it's happening more and more.
It's interesting too, because I'm thinking about as you're talking about it, like there's marketing, which you keep fresh, right? Like different things. And I obviously I follow you and I see a lot of stuff you do, but your marketing is fresh, but your branding is consistent. Right, like how you
Right.
kind of said, like, right. So your
Yeah.
branding is very on point, very consistent. Same thing. So it's that muscle memory, of all the hashtags, like I said, kiss your landlord goodbye. It all started with the tax. Like the colors are bold, but the content is fresh. So it's always kind of informational and interesting, I think that's important. And you're consistent, right?
Yeah.
It's not like and I think that's the number one thing in marketing, is and branding is consistency.
Yep.
You got to put a plan in place, and if you post it once every month, probably not going to have the same effect versus always getting out there and always putting something and always doing and I no matter what it is, right? A lot of like I said, I see your educational stuff and but then also the closings and celebrating the wins and I think it's fresh. I also think it's interesting. You invested in editing, right? Having a marketing person, and it's okay to be. I think your stuff looks raw, meaning like it's not in a studio per se,
Right.
but it is well edited, right? So there is a value to investing in, and I know the growing trend in marketing is to be that cell phone looking up like, hey, I'm here, which you have that to a degree, but it is very, very well edited with, the digitalized and stuff. So I think that's important. So
Awesome.
And it's not super expensive either.
yeah.
It's not cost prohibitive.
Let me ask you this, and I know I probably know some of the answers. What were some of the challenges? Like you have never been afraid to invest, and you've never been afraid to take the money that you've earned and reinvest and reinvest and reinvest to grow and grow and grow. What would be some of the challenges or things that you said, you know what, it didn't work out, or that, if I had to do it again, maybe I wouldn't have done this. Is there anything that comes to mind?
In terms of running a mortgage branch, you have to make a determination. Do you want to get somebody with a ton of experience and pay them a little bit more, or try to, coach somebody up and who doesn't have, that level of experience, but you're kind of teaching them exactly how you want it, but know there's going to be mistakes. I think there's such a fine line there. I've tried them both and I still don't really know the right answer. Something, one of the co-founders always said is you can get the best person on the face of the planet. You can pay them this really great salary, but they can only do so much.
Absolutely.
Right. So eventually you're going to have to end up bringing somebody else on board, and then you're going to feel like you're overpaying that person. So, it's a fine line. And that's primarily, the biggest challenge that I think probably will always face, because that's the one thing with direct to consumer is, you're not just chasing realtors and getting these good, high quality, leads that are coming in. There's a lot of cultivation. There's a lot of follow up. There's a lot of phone calls coming in. So, you need people to really, really help you manage that pretty big database and, take the calls that are coming in, because you can't do it all by yourself. It's just not possible.
Yeah, well, I think that's and Adam, obviously, who's a coach at Crown, has a team, right? Just added another person to the team, and as you grow, you're right. You got to find the right person, right, and or right people, and but probably you couldn't grow if you didn't have the right people behind you, right, and and the right processes in place. And I know you're always you and I talk a lot, not on the podcast, offline, about tweaking and investing, I think that's important to make sure you have the right infrastructure and the ability to grow with the right infrastructure, which I think you've done.
But I was telling you guys before the call, when I just bought somebody else on board, she's doing fantastic, right? But, I spent a little bit more money and we got, 12 to 15 phone calls today. And it's like, realistically, if we continue to produce, volume like that and phone calls like that, she can't handle it. I want to be in the streets at meetings and going to closings and things like that. So, probably going to have to really try to find, another really good person just to assist with some of this stuff. So it's all that fine line of how big do you want to grow? And then obviously, the management aspect of making sure they're doing their job and staying on top of everybody.
Really interesting because, once you have it dialed in, it's really just, this is what I made, like with this ad spend, I generate X lead, and then it's just a conversion ratio all the way down, all the way through. So, you really could, you could tweak that up to a 40 or a 50 loan a month business. As long as
you certainly can.
Running, right? Yeah,
you certainly can. There's a little caveat to it because when you have your personal brand, right? Yeah. And you have people that have been following you for a few years, you can't just take that person. Like you can, with some realtors, you just say, hey, they're not quite ready yet and do this, do that. And they call you. People really look to you and in some cases really look at you as a savior and a hero. And that's not to pat myself on the back, right? Yeah. But it's like, wow, I see all these closings and Mr. Mark, I really, really want a house and just help me. I'll do whatever it takes, right? So when a person says something like that to you, you almost have a personal responsibility, even if they have a 530 credit score, to say, hey, you know what? Do these things and stay in touch with me or stay in touch with my assistant, right? So it becomes very hands-on and it takes a lot. I'm not going to lie. It does take a lot because you have to protect your brand. And you also, you kind of believe in what you're saying. Like you really want this person that reached out to you and said, Mark, I really want to buy a house. Like you want to see him do it. You want to do a video with him one day,
Well, I think that one thing that I've always appreciated about you and not only are you passionate about making money, right? But you're really passionate in helping people, right? Like you're not doing it just for the money, right? Like to quote, since you and I are both Philadelphia Eagles fans, to quote Jalen Hurts, it's not, it's about winning. About winning games is the most important thing. It's about helping people. It's not about the money. The money comes knowing you're going to help people, and I think that's part of that growth mindset. If you're doing it for the right reasons, to grow and help people and really help homeownership in underserved communities, you're going to be a rock star at it because of the passion.
Yeah.
And you can't fake passion, right?
Well, and that passion is what I think further sells it. What further feeds the fire, right? Because then the next people see the last people that you helped, which pushes it more and more, and it's an ever growing thing, I believe.
Yeah. There's no doubt about it. Shortly before I came to Crown, I don't want to say I was lost, but professionally I was a little bit lost. I was really getting tired of it because all of my business was in North Jersey, right? And you only had to do, we can't relate to this anymore, Adam, but you only had to do 2 or 3 deals a month at 400,000 and, you're okay, great month, right? But they were just, rubber stamp, 700 credit score, 300,000 in their 401k, another 100 grand down, conventional loans. And I asked myself, I was like bored and, I'm maybe taking literally 15 calls a month because, the realtors are calling with good people and you're taking the apps and I'm spending like 2 hours a day in the gym and just really not doing much. Right. And, I almost quit. Like before I came to Crown, I was almost like really about to quit the business. I don't even know if I told you this, Rick. And that's when I decided to kind of do this whole thing I'm doing now and decided to kind of come back to Philly and help, the underserved community. And it really reinvigorated me. I haven't felt that way since, Awesome. It gives you a sense of duty and a purpose every day.
Yeah. If you have a why, that's your drive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, look, and you've done amazing things in that market area, and it, like you said, you're going to get a call. You get calls all the time from someone like that. Not only is your branding um, strong, right, and your marketing is strong, but I was thinking about as you're literally talking about the passion is your branding,
Yeah. Well, it comes
right?
across for sure.
Yeah, it comes across in everything you do, I think that the one takeaway is to our listeners, right, is find your niche and be passionate about it, right? Find your why, and really, you know, don't don't be a loan officer for the paycheck, and don't be a loan officer for the we all get paid, and we all get paid well, but the passion is helping people or that marketing or that niche, right? And I think about it. We have a lot of successful people, at Crown that are taking advantage or the opportunity of following their affinity relationship passionately, right? And what I mean by that is, I've got, whether it's a community, right, that like Black Brilliance Homeownership, right, in Philadelphia, or someone that I have a loan officer that loves basketball. His kids play basketball. He played basketball. He promotes it. Guess what? He does about 30 loans a year, basically, from kids basketball, referrals that way because he's advertising something he's passionate about. Kevin, one of our loan officers, his father's a pastor of a church, and you know what? They don't say, "Oh, today's rate's 7.25," but guess what? He's done a loan for every single person, right? He's very influenced in it, right? He's a musical director in his church, and so wherever you find your life, just be passionate about it, and take opportunity because everybody wants a home. That's the American dream is having home ownership, and we know the three of us, 2 weeks ago. And if you hadn't heard, listen to our podcast about owning 50 rental properties. But we know that wealth in America is great on home ownership, right?
True.
If we can help people, go from being a renter to being a homeowner, you've changed. It's generational wealth. I think you actually talk about that in some of your media is talking about generational wealth,
For sure.
my daughter's 25. I'm trying to convince her, even if the payment's a little more than what she's paying in rent, just buy,
Yeah.
and
Or buy a multifamily and rent out the other side or something, I mean,
yeah,
but real estate is forced savings. I saw a statistic that NAR put out. In 2024, the average net worth of the average homeowner in the United States was 435,000. The average net worth of the average renter in the United States was 11,000.
that's crazy.
Isn't that wild? Like the disparity in wealth just between owning a home and not owning a home is just wild.
Well, we've all been there, right? Like
Yeah.
us personally, I'm sure all the people listening,
Yeah.
it can be hard to save at times, right?
Sure.
It's one of the things that I talk about. If you buy a $200,000 house today, right? And in 10 years, it's worth 400, 350, 400. We don't know where it's going, but we do know over 10 years, it's going to go up. That's a historical fact, right? And that person might have $3,000 or $4,000 in the bank and they're 30 years old. Well, they're on pace to probably not save 100 or 150 or $200,000 over the next 10 years, right? Home ownership is the only way. It's literally the only way.
Well, you want to do appreciation. Real estate is the best thing to own when there's inflation because it inflates because real estate is just an exchange of value, just like a dollar is. So if you can put your dollars into other things that store value, as the dollars are worth less, those things are worth more.
No doubt about it. And, that whole direct-to-consumer thing, particularly to people who just don't necessarily know a lot about the things that we're talking about. Once you explain, hey, what was your rent 10 years ago? What was it 5 years ago? Philly, somebody might say $1,200. What's your rent today? 5 years later, it's $1,800. Yeah. Well, imagine if you bought your house 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. Your payment would still be $1,200 today. How would you feel about that? People get off the fence pretty quickly when they start thinking about it in those types of terms, And not only, is your payment the same as 5 years ago, now you probably gained, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 in equity too.
Yeah. No, I think
and
the
if
other
you
thing
keep renting, your landlord is going to not only raise your rent, but he's gaining equity, right? because of like what you said, everything's always going to inflate over time, right? So it's just a zero-sum gain opportunity. There's just nothing there with renting.
I think that most people, and we've done loans for people and looked at applications. Most of America lives paycheck to paycheck.
For sure.
Even the wealthy, maybe
Yeah.
not the wealthy, but even the upper middle class, right? They just buy bigger things. They buy bigger toys, but they live paycheck. But you know how they get their wealth? By rolling over their house to another house, and rolling like they're on their fourth house. And most of the money that they've made that's sitting in their bank account was from selling real estate and moving up and selling. So you got to start somewhere, right? And starting somewhere, no matter where that start button is, will get you to where you want to be 10 years from now, 20 years from now, and I think that you delivering that message in a way, that niche has really helped people, and I know you're passionate about it. And I think that's, went a little off topic of what, like in my mind of what today was, but it's so true, right? That is what you do. Right. And I think that, to listen to loan officers or realtors, right. It's like, you've got to, find that passion, be a expert in that passion, be deliberate in your branding, right? Be deliberate in your marketing, use fresh approaches, be first to lead, right? And I think that those are things that you do really, really well that I don't think a lot of people do. I think a lot of us go and build realtor relationships, and then you're subject to that realtor's relationship, right? Like, if one deal goes bad, they may drop you. If they retire, they may drop you. If they stop working, if they move, right? And, so we're always talking about constantly building our realtor relationship. Your approach, which I think is awesome, is that you're getting to that consumer first, and then even giving those leads to realtors. And now you're building the reverse, where the realtor is more contingent on you than you're contingent on the realtor. Which I think is fantastic, and it's a totally different.
I think part of it too is, it's just completely backwards. I believe that in my heart of hearts. We should do a marketing campaign on this, right? But if you're looking to sell your home, and I did a little bit of this for a while, you call your realtor. If you're looking to buy a home, you call your lender. You call your lender first, right? You got to know what you can do before you do it, right? But the real estate lobby is so much stronger than our lobby, the mortgage lobby, right? Yeah. So they crush us, right? And we don't have a say. And I don't know enough about the, behind the scene mechanisms, but you can't tell me that it's not the easiest thing on the face of the planet to sell. Call your lender to find out what you can do first before you call the realtor. The realtor is going to respect you a whole lot more if you come to them with a pre-approval in hand.
And I think that's a growing trend. I think I'm starting to see more and more people pre-approved before. I think they're starting to get that, right? Because financing is such an important part of the deal, right? Like it's because our parents or grandparents or they were buying houses for $30,000. Yeah, they were making a lot less, but now houses are a lot more, right? And it is about money out of pocket and monthly payment. And I even think move-up buyers, you said call the sellers, call your realtor first. They should still call the mortgage person first, right? Because they got to find out what, I'm going to pull out this money. I got to pay off this debt. This is what how do I want to use this instrument to go future, so that's my two takes. But the three of us are mortgage people. Like,
from a just devil's advocate, if I'm a consumer, I think about the pretty kitchen that I want, not how I'm going to pay for it. I mean, I think that's the issue that we have. But I think, Mark, what you've done beautifully is that you're creating a network of trust by giving and pouring into your community, so that they do trust you, so that they can reach out to you, so that you can advise them. And brother, I think what you've built is just wonderful, and it's been really cool to unpack it with you here today.
I appreciate the invite, guys, and I will say one other thing. They aren't always the easiest loans, right? And people don't always have the best credit either. Job history can be a little bit shaky, and being at several places in my career. But I will honestly say, Crown treats everybody fairly, and if there's a way to get the loan done, we get it done. And there are a lot of loans that other people really will not do. And I will pat myself on the back here because one of the other co-founders, Kaplan, always says, Mark, I don't know how you have zero defaults. Like you do all these loans and they're all, not the best profiles. And you've never had a default, never had a buyback. And, people will pay, but, Crown does a lot of the loans that I know for a fact that other people will not do. And it's just a special shout out and glad to be a part of the family.
Well, I appreciate that. By the way, unsolicited, I'm not paying you a commercial fee. I might use that sound plug for something else, but no, I appreciate that. I appreciate, look, we're on this business together, right? And it's to help more people, right? And and that's one of the reasons why we started the podcast is more to share some of the things that we do to help more people there as well. So I appreciate you giving that plug. You can always, while this podcast doesn't promote Crown, I'm sure you can find myself, Adam, or Mark Wilson at our first initial last name at crownhm.com, whether you want to work here or apply here as well. So
shameless plug, right?
Yeah, it's an unshameless plug. I have no shame in that plug, but I think it's the other thing that's interesting that I'll touch base on is you created your brand, right? You didn't wait for the company's marketing materials, right? You didn't wait for a CRM to send out things, right? You said, what, I'm going to create, my vision is this, I'm going to create a brand. And I think for our listeners that have that growth mindset, really to break down what makes you unique, right? What makes and you targeted a market area that makes you unique, right? Where, all loan, I will say we close loans better than other companies, but there's a lot of companies that close loans, right? We're all getting the money from the same place. Yeah, I just think, there's probably more hands-on reasons why you've had the experience here. But the reality is, you went out and built that market, right? You said, I'm not going to rely on an open house flyer from a CRM. You said, I'm going to go after a niche. I'm going to create my own marketing, and we've helped you with that dream. But I think that if you're a growth mindset person, is you've got to kind of sit down and kind of say, if you want to go after new construction, if you want to go after mobile home financing, you want to go after renovation loans or doctors or whoever, right? Really write down your business plan and then work on branding and creating that niche. And you've done a brilliant, you've been brilliant at that with all your marketing efforts. And I thank you for sharing some of that today.
For sure. Well, I'll say this, but I mean, think about it, right? We're all probably roughly the same age. I know Adam's a little bit younger and a little bit more handsome than you and I, Rick, right? But when I first got in this business 20 years ago, right? You used to have to knock on doors and go to church functions and do all this networking stuff with 10, 12 people in a room, hoping that one person, might use you for a mortgage or you partner up in some kind of way or you meet a realtor and you connect with them. To me, the coolest thing about social media marketing and obviously the internet at large is you can spend a pretty small amount of money and get in front of 1,000, 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 people in a day or in a week or whatever it is you're doing with your message, right? And I just always think back to when I first broke into business and, I'm sitting at an open house and 3 or 4 people might walk in. I'm not knocking this stuff, right? I know it's great, right? I know there's really good reasons to do it. But yeah, and you can reach so many people. And if you put your phone number out there and you encourage people to save it, I get texts from people or calls from people that I first might have spoke to 2 or 3 or 4 years ago at this point, all just because they saved my number en masse, so that's why I'm kind of doing more and more loans now. It's not because I'm doing so much more activity. It might be because I reached people 4, 5, 3 years ago that are now deciding it's my time to buy a house. And you spent 15 minutes with me, back in 2003, and I never forgot it.
It's pushing that rock uphill, right?
Yeah.
But they say the boulder uphill, get to the top, and then it starts building momentum on the way down. So awesome. Thank you. Well, Adam, anything you wanted to add?
No, again, just thank you so much, Mark. This was very insightful, and I think both. I mean, I'm blown away by what you're doing. I love it, and I know Rick is as well. And I think all of our listeners have a lot of great takeaways from today. So thank you so much for carving out the time to chat with us.
No doubt. I appreciate you guys for having me. We'll talk soon again.
And I know you're going to be launching a podcast soon called I think it's the Black Brilliance Homeownership Podcast. So we're really excited for that journey. If we can help in any way, make sure that if you are listening and you want to tune in, our audience is probably more geared towards mortgage and real estate professionals, but I know that you're going to be launching something real soon to en masse. En masse? I don't know if I'm not sure if that's to a lot of people.
Black Brilliance Podcast.
The Black Brilliance Podcast. So that's really exciting stuff as well. So we're looking forward to that. So thank you all for listening to this week's episode of the Growth Mindset Podcast. I'm Rick Riddle with Adam Crosley with our special guest Mark Wilson. We look forward to engaging. If you please comment and share with us. We are all students of success, and we love to hear from everybody. So and if you want to be a guest on our podcast, go to the growthmindsetpodcast.com, and there's actually a way to fill out your story, and we'd love to hear from you. So thank you all, and please remember to subscribe and listen. You can subscribe anywhere you hear our podcast: Odyssey, Apple, YouTube. We are everywhere. So thank you all.
Awesome.
This podcast has ended. Go in peace.
You've been listening to The Growth Mindset, hosted by Adam Crosley and Rick Riddle. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with your colleagues. Stay tuned for more actionable insights to fuel your career success. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are personal and do not necessarily reflect the official policies, positions, or opinions of Absolute Home Mortgage Corporation or Crown Home Mortgage. The content is intended for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered professional advice or an official endorsement by either organization.